Huh? What's going on, man?
Son, how you doing?
Can't complain, man. Doing good, doing good. Fired up to be back, talking a little more Commanders as always today, guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk a little info. So today we're going to be talking training camp preview. We got 5 questions coming up, different position group previews as well with our receivers and our linebackers. So get ready for that. Training camp is here. Once you're hearing
It's
this,
here.
it's training camp time. We're recording it just about before it's starting,
It
but it's
started
basically
already with
here.
the rookies.
That's right. Rookies have already reported. So training camp's here. And then we're gonna finish out with our Super Bowl picks, our way too early Super Bowl picks. It's gonna be a great time. It's gonna be a good time. But before we get started, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you subscribe, go ahead and send an email over to Dom and Pop Giveaway1 at gmail.com to join our subscriber giveaway. Once we hit 2,000 subs, we will be raffling off a Jaden Daniels jersey to a subscriber. So all you have to do, hit that subscribe button, send an email with your name, address, and jersey size to Dom and Pop Giveaway1 at gmail.com. And we will be raffling that off live on the pod, giving it away. So don't forget to join that. How you doing, Pop?
Yeah, doing great. We had a blast with the jersey giveaway last time.
It was a good time.
Really worked well. We had a lot of participants. A little bit of a slow start. Maybe it's pre-training camp, but if you're thinking about joining, go ahead and pop it over there. I'll pin it to the comments. I think I might have forgot to do that last week, but um, I'll
Maybe
put it
that could
in the
be
comments,
correlated to
the
the slow
details.
start.
Could be on pop. I was out of town, so I'll use that as an excuse. But yeah, just get it in there. It's good fun, and just recommend to friends. Please tell friends, family, everyone. Give us a sub. Go get a jersey, Coach. I know you want a Commander's jersey, Coach. Go ahead, apply for one.
There it is. And without I say we get right into talking training camp at this point. What do you say, Pop?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, the rookies reported to training camp on July 18th, which was a couple days ago from when we recorded this, or literally yesterday, excuse me. And we are going to have the vets report on Tuesday. So, you guys watching this on Monday, it's about to start tomorrow. And then if you're watching it later on in the week, it's already been going on. So, quick shout out to the commanders. It's time before we get in to the training camp talk. I say we got to handle some housekeeping here. We got to handle the alumni. So we just want to give a quick shout out. Commanders have retired Art Monk's jersey. How cool is that, Pop?
Yeah, it's great. He was absolutely one of my favorite players. I always said, we're gonna have a little chat about Terry. Terry is the Art Monk of this generation's team. Just a class player, great player. In the '80s, he was the guy. I mean, he's very quiet, unassuming. You know, um, I don't know if you remember this, but he was the all-time leading receiver in the NFL. He broke the record, which was amazing. 3 Super Bowl wins, big part of all those great teams in the '80s and early '90s. Loved number 81. I always had a little bit of an affinity for a receiver. I remember always, loving to catch the football. And too bad I'm only 5'8". I probably didn't have quite the speed to get there, but I love number 81. And another great move by Josh Harris led organization to get that done. Great video, seeing all those veterans surprise him at his house. So much fun and well deserved. I love the fact that they did that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the move. I don't think there's anything more to say other than that. It's great that we get to just continue to see Josh Harris and the organization make the right choices to continue to honor the alumni. And I think it's going to be retired on Sunday Night Football,
The first
if
time we wear the
that's correct.
throwback.
Exactly, yeah. So that'll be really cool. That'll be really cool. I think it's gonna be great, and we'll whoop some Seattle behind in the process, hopefully. Um, but getting right into it, so going into training camp, we got our top 5 questions. So, question number one, the question everybody wants to know, the question that I'm hoping gets resolved by the time you guys hear this, but also kind of not hoping because we're probably gonna have to redo this podcast if it does. Terry McLaurin spoke this week. Obviously, that didn't go so great for us, for everybody involved. It was not a good thing. So what's your reaction to that, Pop, and how do you think that contract situation is going to play out?
Yeah, you started texting me, and I forget what exactly your text says, but you were saying, that that's not good or something like that, and I didn't even realize that he is giving a press conference or that was even going to be a thing that day. And I guess he was doing one of those Eastern Motor commercials. But I mean, it was a bit jarring to hear Terry speak so directly and so frankly. He's usually kind of an unassuming, under the radar guy. I wouldn't have necessarily expected him, not that he did anything wrong, to speak out like that. I think the only thing about what he said was it bothered me that there isn't ongoing communication between the two of them. I don't know why there wouldn't be something along the lines of "we want you here," but we're a little bit not aligned necessarily on the terms of the contract or whatever the disagreement is between the two, which we don't know. I mean, there was a report that came out from one of the top guys, I forget the name, saying that definitely Terry wants it to start with a three in terms of his annual salary. That's kind of where he thinks he should be at, which I can totally understand. It seems like from the Commander's point of view, the age and where he's going to be 3-4 years down the line when his contract runs out, is the concern there. How can he continue to produce at this level through his age? Terry had a counter argument to that, saying that, hey, there's not as much tread on my tires and I'm only ascending as a player, which is true. So it's a tough situation. I kind of see both sides of it, honestly, to a degree. Hopefully they've reached out. So you think there's a chance that it gets done that quickly?
I think it's an any minute now type of scenario. I think it's
Yeah,
going to get done. I mean, I don't have
I was
sources on
confident.
this. I don't have sources on this, so to speak. I don't know that it gets done um, immediately in terms of like before training camp even starts. I think we might have to deal with some kind of like hold in situation before we get to that. Or maybe a full on holdout, maybe just is at home playing 2K or playing golf. But I definitely see it getting done. And I think it gets done within the next couple of weeks. I think it gets done before the end of July for sure. And looking at, I did a little research before we got on here, just to like contract disputes and extensions for 2020 through present, and the players that had the disputes and on their ended up on the same team, right? So Lamar Jackson, March of 2023, requests a trade, denies the franchise tag, whatever. He ends up on that same team. Kyler Murray, you have the whole film study clause dispute. They get that removed. He stays on the same team. Jonathan Taylor requests trade, pup list in July of 2022. He requests a trade, and by fall, before week 5, he signs that extension. Once he comes off that pup list, he doesn't actually miss a snap. Nick Bosa, same thing. Didn't go to camp summer of 2023. September 6th, 5 year, $170 million signed. Zach Martin, same thing. Missed 3 weeks of camp. Same thing. Chris Jones, Brandon Ayuk, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love, CeeDee Lamb. All goes on and on and on. A lot of these guys miss camp. Most of these guys miss camp, except for Tua, who kind of held in. And all of them signed extension. And every single one of them, except for Chris Jones, who I think played the first game without his new deal, or maybe signed his new deal on the day of that first game, um, played. So it's roughly about 2/3 of these extensions end up in long term deals, and actually, in that math, the math that I've done, you're including Terry and Trey Hendrickson, who are in active holdouts right now, as the no column. So it goes even higher, and the only names that I could find that had disputes with their team and did not sign were Roquan Smith, which obviously we run a better show than the Bears here. Sorry to break it to you, Chicago fans. Hassan Reddick, who really old off the field stuff, not the same guy as Terry McLaurin. And same thing with Matthew Judon, also didn't work out. And all three of those organizations, if you look at the Bears, the Jets, and the Patriots, were in absolute organizational turmoil during that time. So I don't think we're a part of that category. I think this is just how business gets done. Look at Bosa, look at Ayuk. I know a guy who happened to be there, who happens to be making the same decisions here. Those got done. Maybe you could see a situation like that, but I think they're gonna want to have Terry in. But I can't. My prediction is it's a hold in.
Yeah, I think the thing too, you got to look at it. So we're going to do as part of our position group previews. We're going to talk receivers. We're going to talk receivers and tight ends in kind of one big group later. And I think when you look at that receiver group, you're going to start to realize how much we need Terry, you know. And so, and I also think from Terry's point of view, right? I mean, I was thinking about it. They're talking Raiders or New England as possible landing spots. I mean, think about it from his point of view. This team is on the cusp of doing something great, contending for championships. So if they say, come to you and say, look, we don't think it's quite 31, we think it's 28, are you really going to walk away from that? You know, with the opportunity to really take this to the next level. You got your first taste of winning, first taste of being with a great organization. It's 2 or 3 million a year at that point. I mean, what's the difference between, 28, 31 million a year in terms of your lifestyle, right? So, I mean, I don't know where they're going to go with it. I think the issue here is I think if it was a 3-year deal inclusive of this year, I think that feels about right for him to get paid and get at a high level because you get it from 31 to 32, 33. But then it starts to creep into a territory where you've got to sign Jaden. And I also think they're thinking that Debo comes out, has a great season, and he's a guy they want to try to keep around. So they're trying to put all the pieces together and sit down with Terry and go, look, if we pay you, if we break the bank for you, it's going to reduce our flexibility of what we're able to do everywhere else. And we're about winning championships. So I think that at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they've got to show him some love. They've got to say the right things. They got to make him feel wanted for sure. But hopefully they can come to a reasonable um, conclusion because I think that yes, we love Terry. Do I think he's going to have a great season? Do I think there's going to be any drop off in 2025? No, but as he hits age 31, 32, 33 seasons, can you expect that to continue at that level? That's where the challenge is, right? But I hope it gets done. My panic meter is up a bit. I'll have to say that. I'm on about a 5 or 6 at this point.
And when you look at some of the other issues, I mean, wouldn't it be great if we had drafted a receiver in the first round within the last 5 years that was productive? Wouldn't that be great? It's just it speaks to just the level of like organizational malpractice that set us up to be in this position where like Terry had this much leverage because if you look, we're going to talk about that receiver group. It looks very different if Terry moves on. And but that's the issue with kind of the way the team is constructed. It's so hard to project the outcome because it's such an unprecedented like a receiver at Terry's age that is you could argue not even at the prime of his career in terms of production yet is very rare. I'd say close to, you wonder if last season was the mountaintop. If it is, how long can he stay at the mountaintop? What is that mountaintop worth? If you're the bottom line is if you're signing a guy who's turning 30 to a 4-year deal in the NFL, by that fourth year you're overpaying him. That's just how it works. There's just no way most of the time. And as a GM, you can't bet on, well, we've got the 1% here. We've got the guy that breaks that mold. You can't bet on that when you're building a team. That's not how this works. So it's a very tricky situation. I'm all for paying Terry what he deserves. I think he deserves upwards of that 30 figure. Over that 3-4 years, just get it done. I just want it to get done. So moving on, I think it's probably going to be our lengthiest segment of this top five here. But moving on to number two, Von Miller. Breaking news for some of you, probably not. Most of you have heard it by now. But breaking news: Von Miller signed a 1-year deal with the Commanders. What are our expectations for Von Miller and the Commanders' defensive line now? What do you think about that deal, Pop? I was very surprised, but very excited about it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, there's mixed feelings in the sense that it's a 1 year deal, and he's a 36-year-old player, great player, still, he had a very high PFF rating last year, although he only played 25% of the snaps or whatever. You kind of wonder a little bit why Buffalo didn't push to keep him. But I think in that specialist type role, he's going to be in rushing packages. We needed to get a vet player. We needed to get a 1 year rental to help the depth of that D line, to help that edge position. And I think does he make the Commanders better? For sure he does. And so from that point of view, you've got to like the signing. I think he can still spark and add that specialist role in the way this, you know, Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn can coach him up. I think that not that he needs coaching up, but it's more scheme, getting him in the right positions and the right scheme and the right opportunity in that defense. I think he could definitely help, and I think it's good. And we're going to have to address and get younger at that position. But for this year, I think it's super important that we sign him. So if he's the best one out there that they thought from a vet perspective, they could contribute in 2025. I'm all for it.
He's chasing a ring. Let's call it what it is. And there might be there's some juju going on this podcast. There's some fans that don't want to believe it. But from the guy who told you when we were 7-2 last year that this team belongs in the NFC Championship, I will tell you that that's what's going on here. Von Miller sees the Commanders as the team that is closest to being a title contender that he can make a difference on and go win a Super Bowl and go get a ring to end out his
And
career. That's why
and the
he's
number
coming here.
one reason for that is our number three question.
Exactly.
How's that for a setup?
Precisely. But just to wrap up the Von Miller thing, look, he's not going to play more than like 15, 20% of snaps. He's going to be a situational rusher, third down, go get him. And the dude can still ball in that scenario. He's not going to be an every down beast, but they manufactured 10 and a half sacks for Fowler Jr. last year. They could do something like that for Von Miller again. And Fowler Jr. was off the street. Fowler Jr. signed here last year because he had no other options. That was not like, look at the contract, look at the point in his career, look at the type of injuries that guys had, look at his age. That was not
It
might beat
was a
me up if he sees me in person, but that was not that was not
no,
a
but I mean there was
signing
a
that was,
strategy last year on D line,
yeah,
right? They just signed a bunch of guys and they seen who rose to the top. I mean that's what they did.
exactly.
Yeah,
And he's a guy that's not going to be, if you put him in on 3rd and 8, you don't check to a run towards his side because he's a liability in the run game. Like he's a guy that can cover on that end as well. So I'm a fan of this deal. I think it's great. I was a little surprised that it was him particularly, but I thought veteran edge rusher was definitely going to come in, and he played a key role in that Rams run. He had a sack in every single playoff game they had in that Super Bowl run where he went there in a similar situation. And it's gonna be it was in 2021, but he was at the same kind of point in his career. Um, it's gonna be a situation where he's in this for late game scenarios, late playoff runs, 3rd and 6, go make a stop. Vaughn's got fresh legs, put him in. That's what he's gonna be here for. And I think it's great for that. So to Pop's point number three, the reason Von Miller's here is number 5, Jaden Daniels. Our expectations for Jaden Daniels in 2025, do you think he's an MVP player, continued progression, or a step back? I think we can both agree no step back for Jaden Daniels in year number 2, right? We don't
yeah. I
expect
think the
that.
question is, is there a significant jump from last year to this year? You were pretty adamant that if not for the injury, he was an MVP candidate last year. So I guess MVP contender is the right answer to this one.
I see Jaden as a MVP candidate this year. I think he should have been an
If
MVP
healthy,
candidate
for
last
sure.
year. Um, I mean, if you look at some of the other guys that were in conversation, like the fact that you had Jared Goff on that graphic
Yeah, we're not saying
was
he's
just
going to win
heinous
it.
to
We're
me.
just saying he's going to be in the top five. His name's going to be at least mentioned.
If Jared poo-poo up his back at the number 1 seed golf, can be an MVP candidate after his performance last year. And don't tell me I only watch. I had Jared Goff on. I have him on my dynasty fantasy football team, so I keep him every single year. I had him on my team last year. I watched most Lions games that I could get a handle on. I pay for Sunday ticket like a sucker every year. I know what Jared Goff did last year. It was not more than what Jaden Daniels did last year, and it was not more than what Jaden Daniels is going to do next year, barring he starts at least 14 games healthy. I think he belongs in the MVP conversation, and he will be in the MVP conversation.
It's a question of too of how they've helped him with the roster, right? We've talked a lot about the O line and how the O line is so much better. We talked about the addition of Debo, so you've got another great weapon to go to. Obviously, you got to get Terry signed. So I think that as a team, as the team improves, that sets him up for that kind of run, even more so than he
Yeah,
was set up last year, right? I mean, this roster is so much better. We hope so.
yeah. I agree. I agree. I think MVP conversation will be alive and well for Jane Daniels. Let's put it this way. I think way more likely we have an MVP contender conversation than we have a sophomore slump conversation. Moving on to number four, speaking of Pop's point of the Commanders roster, do we think the Commanders roster is too old? The way they've built up this team, you're talking about giving Terry McLaurin 3 4 year extension with coming around on age 30 this year. You're talking about Von Miller is what 35, 36, getting a
36.
1 year deal. Do you think the Commanders roster is too old? It's currently by average, it's currently the oldest in the NFL.
The answer is no. I mean, they've had to plug holes. They're trying to contend now. They're doing that. Yes, there is some situations that at some point, Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner and guys like that aren't going to be able to continue. I think, some of the other older players are, you know, backups. Von Miller is a specialist that's going to come in. Josh Johnson is your third string quarterback. You don't even know who's going to be on the roster. He's 39. There's some things dragging that age down, but I think the thing is there are some really good, talented young players that are either that are starters or big time contributors on this roster, starting with number 5, Josh Connolly Jr., um, Mikey Sanistril. I mean, to name a few. So, Quat Martin, who we expect to be a really good player for us. So, if it wasn't for the fact that you got those building blocks of young, talented guys, maybe you would think that way. But I think that I actually think it's a brilliant job by Adam Peters of putting them in position to contend by getting these veteran players mixed in with these young guys as he continues to build up that roster.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you might feel a little bit bad about the age situation with this roster if you didn't have to have. I mean, look at our last batch of draft picks, right? Look at, you know, just first rounders, Manuel Forbes, Jahan Dotson. These are guys that got directly replaced by veterans and had to be replaced by veterans because they were incapable of doing their jobs. You had to go replace Emmanuel Forbes with Marshawn Lattimore, who's a few years older because Emmanuel Forbes was useless. You had to go replace Jahan Dotson with now Debo Samuel because Jahan Dotson was relatively useless, frankly. Jahan Dotson put on his invisibility cloak after his rookie year, didn't want to block, got too big for his britches, whatever you want to call it. And we fleeced Philly out of a third round pick for him. Call it what it is. So it's a thing where like would I rather we have 21-year-old left tackle than that is as good as Laramie Tunsil than Laramie Tunsil? Of course. But Laramie Tunsil is one of the best left tackles in the NFL. I don't care that he's 31. He's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. And you supplement that by going and getting one of the best tackle prospects that you could get within reach in Josh Connerly Jr. Start him out on the right side, improve that right side. I mean, that's the thing is you have guys like Andrew Wiley whose age is going to contribute to this. Andrew Wiley's not going to be starting by November. By the time Sam Cosby's back and healthy, you've got guys like you said, Josh Johnson, who's 39, contributing to this. You've got guys like Von Miller, who, bottom line, was like tied for sixth, seventh, a lot of key PFF metrics last year, is still a top 10 situational rusher in the league. You want him on your team. You do. That's the bottom line. The only reason Von Miller is not on a team yet is because he didn't want to go to minicamp. He didn't want to go to OTAs. And vets at that point in their career that have that kind of clout sign later on in the year. So I'm not too concerned with the age because, like Pop said, I think you said it perfectly, man. I mean, you've got Mikey Samerstill, Quan Martin, you've got Trey Amos. Now you're building, and you've got Jaden Daniels, of course. You've got uh, young talent that you're building at these positions. Even a guy like Jalen Lane, who we haven't seen a ton from yet, but he did get the Zach Ertz stamp of approval, which Zach Ertz was the first one to say how impressed he was by Jaden Daniels, and that he thought he was going to be a stud. Zach Ertz said the same thing about Jalen Lane, so keep an eye out for that.
Speaking of Zach Ertz, you got these key contributors like Zach. Why is he back for another season? Why is Bobby Wagner back for another season? Why did Von Miller start? Look, Von Miller signed. We're out of our comfort zone saying this, but it's to get a ring. That's what these guys are thinking right now. That's what this team is thinking. We can say the quiet part out loud, as you would say. They're thinking ring. They're thinking championship run. This team is in to contend for a championship this season. And bottom line is, you don't have a 35-year-old vet quarterback running the show. You've got Jaden Daniels, right? So you're young at the most important position on this field. So I think it's what they've had to do. And also, you've done this, you've gone this route. Could they've gone the other route? Could they've gone complete rebuild and build through the draft and just accumulate draft picks? But then you're not building a winning culture. They were able to build a winning culture from day one, season one, going forward. And I think that's brilliant and that's so important, not only for the team and the culture of the team, but also for the fan base.
Yeah. And there is literally one player from or two players from the last 4 years of drafting that are on the roster. So you have to three, sorry. So you have to fill those gaps. There's no choice. So they're going to continue to fill the gaps. They're going to continue to draft well, and drafting well will bring the age down eventually. But as long as, like you said, as long as you're getting Bobby Wagner and he's still balling, that's all that really matters. Like, I'd rather have a 35-year-old that's hooping than a 25-year-old that's incompetent. Like, we could have moved Jamin Davis back to the mic last year. Would you rather have done that? We'd be younger. That was our other option, right? We'd have been younger. We'd have been younger if we kept him there, but we didn't. And then yeah, so there's enough on that, on the age thing. And I think the last thing, bold prediction for a player to stand out during training camp. I'm going to stick with the Zach Ertz metric, and I'm going to stick with Jalen Lane here. I think he's going to get more reps. Yeah, there you go. Makes it easy, right? Wraps the segment up. He's going to get more reps with the starters. Terry's probably not going to be playing as much. He's got speed. He's going to be showing off that speed. I think he's going to be really good for this team.
I think the biggest concern with Jalen Lane is going to be what do you do with Luke McCaffrey? Because I think at some point he becomes he advances the expiration date of the Luke McCaffrey pick. That might be a pick that we go back and look at. Nothing against Luke, um, but yeah, I think I agree. He's the guy that I'm most excited for, and I think that we're going to be buzzing about. Now, sometimes we talked about this last year. Sometimes when you're buzzing about a guy in training camp and they show that spark, doesn't necessarily translate to the season 100%. Let's hope it's the case with Jalen, though. So I agree. He'd be my guy.
In regards to the Luke McCaffrey pick, I think he'll contribute on specials. He's probably going to be I think he might be your kick returner this year. If they want to preserve Eckler to keep him more
Jalen
fresh.
Lane can return kicks too.
I
Maybe
think
it's a
Jalen Lane you
combo.
might see more in a punt return situation.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you'll probably see
I
Debo
think
return,
Luke did a good job returning
but
kicks last year.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think so too. I think
He
that's
looked
where
good.
he'll be useful right now, and I think Luke McCaffrey will probably get relegated to, unless somebody rolls an ankle, you're not going to see a ton of Luke McCaffrey, and even the best general managers don't hit on every player,
So
and you got
we're
to
going to
draft
talk
backups.
receivers in a minute here. So maybe we pause on that. We'll get into that a little bit
Yeah,
more. Yeah.
yeah. I think to no fate of his own is just his last name makes you think he's going to be an All Pro, but I don't think that was
I
ever in
hope
the cards
so.
for Luke
I
McCaffrey.
hope so.
Um, previewing our next two position groups. I say we move on to that, Pop. What do you say?
Yep. Yep.
Let's get into it. So, our expectations for each position group we'll talk about. Last week we did, what did we do? Defensive line and running back last
Yeah.
week,
So
and then the
so
week
far,
prior,
maybe just to
offensive line and
recap in
safety.
case anybody wants to go back and listen, we did safety and an offensive line, and last week we did D line and running back. So this week we're doing
Yeah,
linebacker and receiver group.
exactly. Um, so moving on up, getting this thing moving forward here. So my for linebacker, our projected starters are going to be Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. And then other notables, you've got Jordan McGee, Dom Hampton, and Cade Madrano at linebacker, the rookie we took out of LSU. So, what do you think of this linebacker group, Pop? What's your overall review here?
Well, I mean, Bobby Wagner is still playing at a Pro Bowl level, still a top 100 guy. Um, Gotta love that, and I think there's no reason to think there'll be a drop off there. So just solid. And Frankie, I think Frankie is an ascending player. I think he provides a great spark. So we became one of the better line grapping backing groups, going from being one of the absolute just worst or probably the worst in the NFL. And the young guys, I think it's going to come down to the young guys, right? Does Jordan McGee step up and do what we think he's capable of doing? Hopefully he can stay healthy. Dominic Hampton is interesting as well. He's a guy that they really like. Kane, we talked about Kane. He's got all the intangibles. Hasn't played the position for too long. Seems like to me, much more of a project type guy. Although if you were to put a guy in the lab in terms of his physical ability and make him come out, it looks something like Kane Madrano, a lot of speed, good size, but bit of experimental there. I don't know. That would be a real surprise to me if he's contributing a whole lot more than special teams. But I think Jordan McKee is really the wild card in all of this. If he steps up and becomes what they think he can be, then this group goes up a lot of notch, and there's a lot more flexibility into what they can do with that group.
Agreed. And shout out to our guy, Lou Holder. I was talking to him about that earlier this week. We were texting back and forth about the Vaughn signing. We were saying, he keeps telling me, he's like, don't forget about Jordan McGee. Mark my words, Jordan McGee, Jordan
Love it.
McGee. And I believe too. I mean, you can look back, man. Look back on our Twitter. I was tweeting about Jordan McGee in February, telling y'all, don't forget about this kid. You could see the way they were kind of
He's the
moving
key.
was hitting towards they believe in him. I think he's going to really show up this year. I think this is one of our strongest groups on this team, which is I still can't get over it. I'm sorry. I still can't get over saying this is one of the strongest groups on our team, considering how neglected this position group was by two former linebackers. Um, and I think I give this group a solid A, I think, personally.
Yeah, they're very high on McGee for sure in terms of what you're hearing from the coaches, and is if not for his injury, I think he'd be a guy that we'd be talking about more at this
Yeah.
point. We would have seen more out of him last year. So um, yeah, I think it's good. It's a good blend of those vets and young guys that you can feel optimistic about, including Hampton. So like this group a lot. I agree. So we're going. What's the grade?
I said A.
A. I'm with you.
Yeah, solid
Sorry,
A.
I was reading a little bit, researching a little bit during that.
I think it's the second best position group on the team, the quarterback.
Strong.
Receiver.
That's strong.
Receiver, which I think is probably number three right now. Granted that this first guy stays around and we're all wearing 17
He
jerseys
has
here and
to. I mean, if
hopefully on the next couple pods.
it's timely that we're doing a receiver group because as we go through this, he's got to stick around for.
We are
It would
screwed.
be a big loss, a
So
huge loss to this roster.
now this is the receiver group, but Pop has three tight ends included. So I guess we're calling this pass catchers.
I just did
Or we
all of it
just
because it wasn't blending. The only two we got left
okay,
are quarterback and cornerback next week. So
great.
we were odd number out. So I just let's do all receivers,
I
wide
like it.
receivers and tight
So
ends. Knock it
we'll
out.
put pass catchers in this. Well, I guess we can quickly do two separate grades for wide receivers and tight ends. But looking at our pass rushers or pass catchers, you got Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Noah Brown, Zach Ertz. The only thing that you worried about with this group was, do you have vertical speed without De'Ami Brown now? And you know Terry has the vertical speed, but if teams really roll over and cover Terry, do you have that? And then they go ahead and they draft Jalen Lane, who at minimum will be good enough to punish you if you leave him in single coverage and you roll coverage over the top of Terry McLaurin. He's got that type of speed. You were also looking at guys like Luke McCaffrey, Ja'Cory Brooks, Michael Gallup, KJ Osborne, kind of backups that'll be around there. I would be shocked if Gallup and KJ Osborne are on the roster come the fall. If both of them are, maybe one of them sneaks on there, but I would be very surprised. Effectively, your wide receiver three will be Zach Ertz. That's just how this thing's going to work. As long as Ertz stays healthy, look for him on just about every third and fourth down. And teams tried to stop it for 20 weeks last season and couldn't do it. That connection with him and Jaden is there. I would love to see Ben Sinnott start getting more involved. But we don't call tight end screens in this offense, thankfully. So you haven't seen a ton of his yak ability yet. But I would love to see him get more involved. But it's crowded, man. In terms of pass catchers, you start getting into the end. When you start adding Austin Eckler's ability out of the backfield, you start adding if a guy like Krosky Merritt can exist at all, really, but especially as a pass catcher, if he has some ability like that, you start adding that they probably want to run the football more this year than they did last year. There's only one
Yeah,
football, you know?
yeah. Ben said its biggest issue is two things, right? Zach Ertz's continued effectiveness, and he's just a
Yeah.
favorite target of Jaden. They've just got a great connection, and I think Debo Samuel, to a degree, if you think of Ben Sinnott was talked about being in that hybrid, you know, um, fullback slash tight end kind of position. I forget what they call that. I'm drawing a blank, but but Debo's a guy that you probably want to get the ball in those kind of situations, right? Those short passes, screens, punish people. So maybe they can work him in a little bit more. Of course, John Bates, best blocking tight end in the league. That's important. So important. So you got to like that from this group. But getting into wide receiver again, right? One thing we haven't mentioned: Noah Brown's healthy. Scary injury, very mysterious. We didn't know what happened to him. We're seeing, there is social media workout videos now of Noah Brown. They're expecting him to plug him in. So I think that's really good for the depth of this thing, because I think the one thing about Noah Brown you can say is he's a pro. He's a really good route runner. Wish he'd not have as many drops as he does sometimes, but I do think he's a guy that has a good connection with Jaden. And then speaking of that, I mean, anyone that thinks Debo's not in shape, and I know social media, and these guys post videos, but that looks scary. This guy looks like he's a guy that's really determined, and I think he's impacting Terry McLaurin's contract situation, because I think he's a guy that they're already thinking ahead, going, if he's looking this good, he's somebody we want to be able to sign and have stick. I really believe that. So, I think that it's an interesting group. If Jalen Lane, if our bold prediction becomes true, and there's no way to know because he's a rookie and he's a fourth round pick. But if that comes true and he becomes a contributor and we can get him the ball, he becomes almost this year's Zacchaeus, but being a rookie and being this year's Zacchaeus, that's something to get excited about, right? He's not a vet that's been in the league for a long time, that's in a niche kind of role. Then I think you can start really getting excited about this group. So sneakily, I agree with you. A really good group here, but gotta have Terry. Got to have
Yeah.
Terry.
Terry's key. And you know what? Frankly, I mean, you talk about like being this year's Zacchaeus or whatever. I don't want a Zacchaeus
In
this
terms
year.
of
God bless.
contributions,
Like,
that's what I meant.
I know.
I
And
knew
what I'm
you were
saying
going to
is
get me on
I
me for
don't
that
want
one. As I
I
was
don't want
saying it, I said, I'm with
it's
you.
not
Make your point.
about it's not about OZ. I think he played really well. I think when he put the ball in his hands, he played well. He had a couple drops I didn't love, but so did everybody for a couple weeks. But I think I don't want to have to care about a receiver making a 450 to 600 yard contribution to this team this year because I want Terry, Debo, Ertz to be so dynamic that you just get a few big plays from the other guys. Frankly,
That's what I'm kind of
that's
talking
what I
about.
want.
Yeah.
So I'm not super concerned about, last year we just had Terry and then you needed, 500 yards from OZ, 500 yards from Noah Brown, 500 yards from Diami. You needed any given week. You never knew who the second guy to step up was going to be. I don't want that this year. I want you. I want you to know that Terry's going to hoop, and if you do too much on Terry, Debo's going to punish you. It's like look at the Lions, right? They got St. Brown, they got Laporta, and they got Jamison Williams. And any given week, one of those guys is going to mess you up. You just don't know which one. That's what I want with this team. I want any given week, McLaurin, Samuel, or Ertz are going to mess you up. And if Lane elevates himself into that category, great. But I'm so sick of these, 5 catches for 45-yard performances from a random dude every week. I don't need any more of that. Let's get the targets to the studs.
Not to belabor this point because I think there's a whole lot more reason to get excited about Debo Samuel and of course Terry being Terry, right? And that dynamic is to be excited about. But if a Jalen Lane can contribute, if he can flash, if he can give you something similar to what an OZ gave you, you're going to be really thrilled with that,
Yeah,
right? You're going to be
absolutely.
thrilled with that. And maybe it replaces Noah Brown's contribution from last year too. He gets more and more snaps, that kind of thing. But I'm glad to see that Noah's healthy as well. I think that's important.
So, receiver grades B plus for me on
I'll go
receivers.
B. I'll go
Solid
B
B.
because there's questions still, I think, in terms of how it's all going to shake out. Too many questions. Questions about how bad the situation with Terry is going to get. Hopefully that's off the table really soon. Um, and um, and yeah, I mean, once you get to Noah Brown and the depth chart here, what do you got? To me, there's questions there too, right? And
Yep.
Jalen's still a rookie. So I got to go B.
So yeah, I go B plus. Same reason I'm not doing an A is because of all the questions that pop outlined there. So,
Yep.
and then tight end, you have a different grade you want to give tight end?
I go just B across the board.
Agree. Agree.
You know, yeah.
Moving on. This will be quick. Our Super Bowl picks based
We're
on
doing
our
good. We're doing
series.
good, son.
So those of you that have followed our series, our Super Bowl picks, we're gonna go through it here. We've gotten to the final week of our bracket. I've got the Commanders versus the Bills, and I'm standing on it. I'm picking my Commanders to win the Super Bowl this year.
This is crazy.
Think it's
I'm
written.
almost regretting coming up with this idea for these brackets because, wow, we got a monkey on our back. Um, Dominic, if you didn't see it last week, said I was Charmin soft for picking Detroit to beat
Ultra
the
soft.
Commanders and go to the Super Bowl against the Ravens. Look, I didn't necessarily think this bracket through. I just kind of went week to week. I'm sure you did too. Commanders Bills is a pretty cool matchup. That's a rematch of the last time we were in the Super Bowl. We were the Redskins at that time, and we actually smacked the Bills. Mark Rippon at quarterback. B. Mitch was on that team. Great team. Art Monk was on that team. Detroit versus Ravens. This could be an interesting game, but I couldn't pick against the Ravens at this point. Just straight up, I think they're the better overall football team. They seem to win Super Bowls when they get there or they're able to get there. So I'll put the monkey on the insiders back here and say it's going to be the Ravens year this year.
Couldn't wait to do it.
That
Couldn't
one's
wait
for
to do it.
Leah. That one's for Leah.
If you couldn't see the trajectory I thought the only thing that Pop twisted me up on, I thought he was going to do Beltway Super Bowl and then pick the Ravens to beat us. I thought he was going to go
I would not do that.
Full
I would
Benedict
not do
Arnold
that.
on me.
No chance.
He only went half Benedict Arnold on me, but I thought he was going to go full. Uh, but that's where we're at.
We
I
should do
like our
this segment
chances better.
first. You
I
might have to
like our
do one of
chances
those
better.
clips this week.
But
That's
these will
funny.
be two. It's funny looking at this, right? Detroit versus the Ravens. that was the Super Bowl everybody was praying for 2 years ago, and we got stuck with the Chiefs and I can't remember the Chiefs and the 49ers. And it ended up being a great game. But that was the Super Bowl everybody was looking for 2 years ago. And then last year, America wanted Commanders versus Bills, and I got sick to my stomach when I saw that because I knew it was going to end up being Chiefs Eagles because that's always how it goes. Because the Detroit Ravens, neither team made it from the prior year. So we'll see. We'll see if we can get back there. Obviously, don't take it for granted championship run, but I think this team's going to win the Super Bowl this year. I just feel it
Yeah,
in
I
my
mean,
bones.
just saying it for a second, right? Like Detroit, if it was other than the Commanders, that's a kind of team you might, especially with Ben Johnson gone now. That's the kind of team and a fan base that I think you'd root for to get there, just because they've never been and they've had so many years like us of downtrodden, and I think that fan base would go absolutely nuts if they
Yeah,
were able to make that run. And it's a super talented roster. I mean, it's a very talented, scary talent roster. I'm just not sure Jared Goff's the guy to get you there. I think he's a good player, solid, can execute an offense. I think he might miss the offensive wizard. Maybe a little sarcasm there, but
yeah,
he might. He might with the OC change. He's a pro, solid guy. Maybe they've got enough around him to get it done. You got to love that running back group. You got to love that receiver group. That defense gets healthy. They that defense was decimated last year with injury. I think that I would say don't sleep on Detroit this year. I would really say that. So it's not an absolutely out of left field pick.
no, I don't think it's an out of left field pick at all. I think it's very if you track Pop's picks, I am very 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 predictable. I think it's a good pick.
Look, I said it. I'm not going to pick our boys to win the Super Bowl just yet. Maybe
I
next year.
just don't look, man. Jared Goff is just Kirk Cousins. It's
Yeah,
just what he is. So I will never bet on that guy making a clutch play when it counts. And follow the money, man. Sean McVay shipped him out of town because he knew he was just Kirk Cousins, and then he went on and he won a Super Bowl because he
yeah,
got a killer at the position. You got to have a killer at the position, and
and
I see two killers at the position in my Super Bowl. That's why I picked it
and
as I did.
look, we've been having fun with this segment. Training camps get really ready to start, so we'll get serious with that. But I think you can't discount the Eagles, right? It's still the best
Of
team in
course not.
football until we say otherwise. And we both had them getting knocked off early, but I'm not sure that's something that I'd be overly confident with either. And I think the difference between you saw it us playing Detroit and us playing the Eagles. In both cases, I think we were playing against team with superior rosters, but we were able to take advantages of weaknesses there, and obviously take advantage of our strengths against Detroit, against the beat up defense. Where the Eagles are just like, nope, that's not happening. We are going to, you know, take our superior roster and our years of rebuilding over year 1 year, and we're going to run over you. And, you know, as much as we don't like saying it, that's essentially what happened. So I like the fact that we've got that big, monster of a team to have to go after and try to chase. And I do think we've closed that gap. So I think it's going to be a heck of a battle. And I only hate that we got to wait till the end of the year before we get to match up against them. But
Yeah,
so be it.
I yeah, I don't see the Eagles repeating. I don't see the Eagles running it back. But
It's
that's
tough to
we've
do.
already talked about that.
It's hard to do. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. That formula last year is not sustainable, but that's for another episode. That's we've already talked about that enough. And I say we wrap this thing up, Pop.
Let's wrap it.
Well, without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank you for another great week, everybody, and hail to the Commanders.
Hey,